So we want to find out just how happy we are. But before we do that, a couple things that you should know. First of all, this is not a graph that's going to make you happy. It's simply a tool that we can use to help us look at life from a whole new perspective. It allows us to evaluate each of the 5 praise categories and see how we're doing in each area. Also, it's a personal happiness graph. That means it's personal to you. The reason this works 100% of the time is because it's based on what you want out of life versus what you have right now. So you may be tempted to want to ask questions about, like, what do we mean by people or responsibilities? Don't worry about it. It's all about what comes to your mind at the time that you hear the question. The other thing, it is a personal happiness graph. So this is about you. It's not fair to compare yourself to anybody else's graphs, especially because what's important to them is going to be completely different than what's important to you. So before we start plotting your graph, we need to know what points to plot. If you had an opportunity to download the worksheets from personalhappinessgraph.com, go ahead and get those ready. If not, they're available for you in the Finding Your Happiness book on page 26, or you can just get out a piece of paper. It'll work just as well. So the first thing we want to do, if you'll notice, the first column has each of the praise categories, and then steps 1, 2, and 3. So we're ready for our first set of questions. You're going to answer these on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being most important. So the first question, how important are people and relationships to you? I'm going to go ahead and do one along with you here. We're going to say that people are a 10 in importance. Next question, how important are your responsibilities? Let's go ahead and say 8 here. Now, how important are your activities to you? I will put 6. Then how important is money? Put a 9 there. And finally, how important is your environment, your personal space to you? Put a 7. Now we're going to move ahead to our second set of questions that we're going to answer under step 2. First question, how happy are you or satisfied are you with the people and relationships in your life? Let's just say 4 there. Now, how happy are you with your current responsibilities? Say 6. Now, how happy are you with your current activity level? Let's go 5. And how happy are you with your current financial situation? Give that one a 4. And finally, how happy are you with your current environment? I'll put a 9 for that. Okay, now here's where things get a little bit technical. I have to make it technical just to prove that it's really sciencey and it works right. So what I'm going to do, next to step 2, right after your number, just put a 0 and a % sign all the way down. I'll explain why in just a second. You'll have to excuse my sloppy writing here. Okay, now the reason why we have step 3 is because this is the second point we're going to plot on our graph, not step 2. Step 2 is what we're going to use to determine what we're going to plot. The reason for this, if you notice, at environment, we rated it as a 7 importance. And then we said 9 was how happy we were with our current environment. Now, if we actually rated our environment as happier than we wanted to be, that almost implies that we're making ourselves miserable because we're too happy. I don't believe that's the case. What I think we're really saying when we say 9 is that we're 90% happy. We have 90% of what we want. In this particular case, if 7 was what we wanted, we'd have 90% of 7. So let's go ahead and fill in our column for step 3 to determine exactly what numbers we're going to plot. If you want, feel free to grab a calculator here. Okay, so now we're going to plot our points, figure out what points to plot for step 3. So 40% of 10. Way that I like to figure that out, the shortcut for me is 4 times 10 is 40. And of course the decimal would go between the two numbers. If you're using a calculator, 10 times 40% should come out to 4.0 or 4. 60% of 8. 6 times 8 is 48. Again, just the decimal in between. Now, 50% of 6, we should know, most of us know that that's 3. But 5 times 6 is 30. Decimal in between gives us 3 or 3.0. 40% of 9, 4 times 9 is 36. And my decimal's in between. And 90% of 7, 9 times 7 is 63. So 90% of 7 is actually 6.3. So now I have the points that I'm going to plot for step 3. Okay, so now we're going to grab our personal happiness graph. And if you don't already have one, if you haven't downloaded it, you can use the one that's in the book, or just go ahead and grab a piece of paper, a napkin, whatever you have. Label your 5 praise categories along the bottom, and then number from 0 to 10 along the side. First step we're going to plot is our numbers from step 1. So when we asked how important people are, I said that one as a 10. And then for responsibilities, I said 8. Activities were a 6. For money, I said 9. And these are made up numbers, of course, but they're the same numbers we used in the book to illustrate. And then for environment, we said 7. So that is our first set of plot points. What we're going to do is go ahead and draw the line connecting those points. Okay, so here is our first line from step 1. Now we're going to plot our points from step 3 to create our second line. So our first answer came in right at 4.0. And then our second one comes in at 4.8, which is pretty close to 5. So we'll put that right here. Third number came in at 3.0. Our fourth number came in at 3.6, which is pretty close to 4. And our last number is 6.3, so right about here. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw a line connecting these. So there we have it, the personal happiness graph all laid out for us. But what does it mean? Well, our first instinct is to look at the height of the lines to determine our happiness. But that's not actually how we do it. To look at how happy you are, we actually look at the distance in between the top line and the bottom line. The top line represents a perfectly happy you, where the bottom line is you right now. Your happiness is determined by the distance in between. The greater the gap between the two, the greater our discontent. The closer the gap, the happier we are in that particular area. So if we take a look at this particular graph, what we're looking for are areas in which we have gaps that are greater than in other areas. So we look for areas that have gaps and ways that they might be connected. In this particular case, this person has gaps in people and in money. So there may be a connection between the people and the money somehow. Could be at work or a business or whatever it might be. The other major area of concern that we look for isn't necessarily in the distance in between, but sometimes I find that this number right here also affects our happiness. If we've rated activities as low in importance, usually that's what I like to call the pot of gold syndrome. We've put off doing the things that we enjoy doing because we're more focused on being responsible and making money. And we think, well, once I've achieved a certain level, or once the kids are gone, or I've retired or whatever, then I can get back to doing the things that I enjoy doing. We strongly encourage you to raise your activities and how important your activities are to you. And what you'll find is that the other things start to come up as well. For example, you'll be around more people, you'll be in different environments. Typically, that is one way to increase your happiness right away. So that is the personal happiness graph. If you'd like more of an explanation, pick up a copy of the Finding Your Happiness book, or join us at an upcoming Finding Your Happiness event, which you can find on findingyourhappiness.org or johnpolish.com. So that's the personal happiness graph. If you're interested in learning how to close the gaps in any of those areas, then you may want to take advantage of our Finding Your Happiness membership. The membership will include a different personal development course delivered to you each month. Now, we have developed over 20 different courses that focus on each of these different categories to help you narrow the gap between what you want out of life and what you have right now. So check that out at johnpolish.com or findingyourhappiness.org. Thanks for watching, and God bless.